guys, Ryan Biddulph here, blogging from paradise. I wanted to share a few helpful stories about negative feedback with my blog, my blogging campaign, and with my overall brand. The reason why is I see so many bloggers being handcuffed by negative ebook reviews, negative comments, negative flippant attitudes on social media. And of course, there's a lot of bloggers that see that are new to blogging, that have such a deep terror of getting a negative comment, looking stupid, losing their reputation. And these are all fears. Fears are illusion. They're not really there. Only love and abundance and fun and generosity are real or true or truths. Fear is an illusion. It's not real. It's not there. But of course, most bloggers really invest in this illusory energy. And then they miss out. They struggle. They have problems because they're afraid of receiving negative comments or negative reviews, or they actually receive them and they see them and they think, oh my goodness, I'm done. And of course, that's going to bring up a lot of your fears when you're a newbie. Trust me, it was that way with me. It's that way with all bloggers. So here's the deal, guys. If you're willing to be honest about your journey and how you're feeling right now about negative reviews or the fear of those reviews, you will free yourself of this anchor-like energy. Now, a few different stories. Number one, and I'm sharing these to help you see who you will encounter and the type of negative reviews you'll encounter on your journey as you become more and more successful, so you can gracefully navigate the emotions that arise, both from other human beings and yourself, and see greater and greater success. Now, as I'm telling this story, I'm seeing Molly Cat, one of my 3 cats, here at the crib, getting up. Okay, she doesn't want to leave the room. That's a good thing. I thought she was going to pop out. Anyway, the first type of individual, and it's a story from my life, and I've seen this person again and again, not an individual, not an actual person, but that type of guy or gal. Okay, I'll think of, this type of person as far as leaving negative reviews on my blog. It's someone who is 100% transparent. So they have their avatar, it's really them. They're being genuine enough. They're using their real name, and this is on your blog, on social media, and they love what you do, right up until they hate it. It's weird, right? Because you're getting clear, you're becoming more successful and more skilled. That's the truth. But this negative critic, and I could think of a handful of individuals in my experience who are awesome people, and a number seem to be from Australia, curiously enough, and then from the US, and also from Europe. Okay, no, they're from a lot of places when I think about this person. You know, individuals, but collectively rolled into one. They're awesome, and they just start telling you what they don't like about what you're doing, which is okay, no big deal. But then it becomes more deep and biting. And the reason why you have to ignore these people is because 100% of the time, criticism is a projection of self. It says 100% about the person and nothing about you, because you're just a mirror. We're all connected. You're the mirror, you're not the source of the criticism. So they're talking about themselves, and they're in fear, and they're in pain. And I could think of someone particularly explicitly who followed my blog religiously. I didn't like some of the stuff that I put out there here and there, but overall really loved my blog and brand. And he left me just such a long-winded critical comment on my flagship ebook after loving my work for so long. And first I was a little confused. I'm like, this is literally among my best work because it's my clearest work. It's in depth. It's really great money. It's so detailed. So I began to process what was going on. I was reading paragraph after paragraph, and I'm thinking, this is really weird. I didn't really read it. I scanned it, but I'm like, this guy spent about 15 freaking minutes leaving a very negative, dour comment on the quality of my work and trying to eviscerate it. It's so-called, flagship, but it's really garbage. And I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? And then I thought to myself, oh my goodness, let me think of the source of this criticism. He loved what I did for the longest time, and then it's a turn, and there's another individual who did the same thing. They loved what I did, and then they started leaving these really long-winded comments about the quality of my work was declining. It was getting worse. And I was like, holy smokes, they're talking about themselves. Because I thought of this individual, and I know from conversations that they had a very chaotic, hectic life. They were always running out of money. They were always having just lots of problems, mental problems, anger. So I'm like, wait a second. Should I really trust this person's opinion when their life is a wreck? And should I really trust it when they're talking about themselves? So I'm like, no. So, I had to block them eventually because they just started going more off the rails. And I realized that why would I ever let their opinion get to me? I know it's all about them. And then you start looking at their lives and you're thinking, wait a second, what do they know about my ebook as far as that niche? Nothing. They haven't lived that life. They haven't lived their dreams. They're an unhappy critic who's having a great difficulty. So a person offering their opinion or feedback through that prism of pain and fear is going to lie to you. Number one, they're talking about themselves, but when they're saying it's about you, even if you started to take it personally, you're like, wait a second, this isn't a lie. Because it's coming from someone who is really unhappy. So I eventually blocked a person following me on all types of networks and email and trying to find every way. And that's more indicative when the person's following you. It shows that they actually like what you're doing, but they're just unclear in their own lives and that they have stuff to deal with. So you just have to release them. Then you're going to find someone who's the obvious troll, hiding behind avatars. We find them on YouTube quite a bit, silly avatars, and they're cowards, but at a deeper level than being a coward, they're just really, really afraid. And they're hiding behind the anonymity of the internet. And this is someone I remember early in my career who used to follow me around and send me emails. This is like a decade ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And it used to upset me at first because I was new to the online world, so they were triggering my fears. And then I began to think, wait a second, hold on. When I started reading the emails and realizing it was coming from someone who wasn't using an actual name, who was using an avatar, I didn't think they had a phony avatar, a cartoon avatar. I'm like, so there's someone who is not sharing their actual name and is just ranting off the rails. It started to click in my mind. I'm like, I'm processing it. This critic is not so much insane, but obviously they do have mental problems, they're filled with fear and pain. And I imagine this person, this will really help you guys when you find someone who's a troll, walking into, say, Panera Bread and meeting me with a paper bag over their head. You haven't found out who they are. You have no idea who they actually are. And then they're criticizing you. And of course, they'd never do this in person because they're filled with fear. But you start to realize if someone can't even be seen and share their name and their face, why in God's name would you ever trust their criticism? They're living in fear. I want to say this about you and you're garbage, but I'm so afraid to reveal myself that I'd never use my actual name or avatar. I use these silly. So you see, we say a coward or a troll, but it's not that. It's someone who's really in fear and in pain. And there's a part of me that's compassionate, and I have compassion for them. But then there's another part of me that says, well, why would you trust a coward's critical opinion who can't even reveal their name and face? Meeting someone offline, right? So I'm thinking about that person. When I thought about meeting them, an offline setting, they have a paper bag over their head, nothing, indicates who they actually are. Of course, you'd never trust this person's opinion in a billion years, so why would you let it bother you, right? Now we're going to talk about someone who followed me around for a bit. I wrote a guest post for him, a genuine, nice enough person, and he wrote a just phenomenal review for my first ebook, and I'm like, that's great. And then when one of my later ebooks came out, it was a really negative review, not outright nasty, but just negative. So I'm like, okay, this is someone who likes what I do generally. He knows a little bit about blogging, so I wasn't going to take his negative review on one of my other ebooks to heart too much because I know blogging and he doesn't, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Sometimes we have to do this when we're thinking about these stories. And I'm like, wait a second, what does he really know? But okay, he knows some about blogging because he ran a site about blogging and jobs, and more about jobs, but he was a professional blogger, at least I think. So he did carry some weight, some stocks. I'm like, okay, this could be honest, and I know it's about him mainly, but it could give me greater clarity. But then I went back through his Amazon review history, and ethnically, I'm going to be honest, people from this certain region of the world can be really critical because they have a lot of fear and pain. Because let's be honest about this part of the world, there's a lot of fear, pain, terror in this certain region. So you have to think about culturally how this person's growing up, and I have compassion for them, but again, it's going to be through a much different filter than someone who grew up in a more peaceful setting, who's coming more from harmony and love and truth and reality, and someone who's coming from an environment of fear, illusion, distrust, pain, fighting. So I weighed that out, and I go through this when I think about reviews, and then I began to see his other reviews on Amazon, and 8 out of 10 were really negative. So I'm like, why is this douchebag spending so many hours going after what he doesn't want, leaving negative reviews? I hated this, I hated that. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is a pattern. He's not seeing reality. He's not telling the truth because he's doing it through a prism of fear and pain. So even though he has some blogging skills because he's a blogger, rationally and emotionally, energetically, I began to work through it. This guy just likes once in a while, he tunes into what he likes and he leaves a positive review, but then he shows great weakness because he gives into fear and starts leaving all these negative reviews left and right. He's a critic. He's a professional critic largely. So I looked at that review and I'm like, oh, that's what this guy does largely. Just because he left a positive review and he seemed okay. So I immediately eliminated him from my life. And I just moved on, and you start to see, guys, through these stories that, number one, all negative feedback is fear and pain. So it's not true and it's an illusion. Number two, it's all about the individual. You're just the mirror. And number three, you're going to spot certain patterns with people who leave negative reviews on your ebooks, on your blog, who tell you this isn't good, that isn't good. They're coming from fear. Whether they are the best in the world at what they do, or whether they are the worst, or whether they have no skills, you're going to be like, if they're coming from fear, then all negative reviews are illusions and not true. Number two, and this is really more important than anything I'm going to say on this video, aka not a podcast, it's a video. People who offer feedback that will help you do it from a place of tact, love, generosity, and detachment. So it won't be a negative review. It will be loving, positive feedback. You know it's true because it's coming from abundance and clarity, and it will feel really good the clearer you get. You won't feel defensive when a dear friend's like, hey, maybe I'd do this, buddy, because you have love there, which is truth. Anything else is illusion because it's fear, and it's not true, and it's a lie. It's going to really put your perspective of reviews into a greater sense of awareness and clarity, because you're going to ignore everything that's not love because it's not real. Think about that one today, guys.